There you go.
Okay, now I am nervous, but this may be the most on-time event ever held in the history of the California School of Fine Arts or the San Francisco Art Institute. And Bruce could corroborate a big chunk of that history too, because as many of you know, he taught there from the 1950s until his retirement, I think in 2016, maybe or so. I think he taught maybe longer than any other university or college teacher in the world, which is really saying something when you think about it. But he was always engaged. And luckily today we have people in the audience who certainly knew Bruce well and studied with Bruce and knew of Bruce. And we have people on our panel today who studied with Bruce in different decades, including Michele and Jackson, who you guys studied in the
I graduated in 2011.
yeah, and
MFA.
and Rod Titus, who was there.
I entered in 61 and BFA 64, MFA 66, and then faculty from 67 to 74.
And by the time you got there, Bruce had already been there. He was a seasoned professor.
Absolutely.
And also here who will weigh in at some point, but didn't study with Bruce, but Bruce would wander around. So you'll get some stories from him. And that's Jim Edwards, who studied in the mid to late 60s as well. So and we're going to be joined by let's see, who else do we have? Is David on here? David, are you here?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
David is not here yet, but Maciej is here.
And so and when were you two guys here?
I think I graduated with Michele, right? 2011.
Mine was delayed because my mother died. So
Oh,
either
I'm sorry.
were 2010 or 2011. Yeah.
And I passed through from 2012 to 2014.
The questions that I want to start with is just like, how was Bruce as an instructor? Did you take drawing? He would always, I remember hearing him at a faculty senate meeting when they were trying to figure out curriculum things, and he really kind of bristled at the idea of, and maybe changed his mind over the years, but he bristled at the idea of beginning painting and further painting. He just wanted to call it all painting. And so it was all just one thing to him. But I was curious as to where you guys took classes from him, which studios, and what you took, and your fellow students, and what it felt like to first approach his studios to take his classes. So let's see. We could do it in alphabetical or chronological order. Well, let's start with Michele, who's sitting just
in the hot seat.
Yeah, you're in the hot seat.
Let's see. I took several MFA tutorials from Bruce. And I also took a drawing class that was in the undergrad. And I had been warned by figurative painters. I was working abstractly, that Bruce would absolutely not like me. He would be very hard on me, and that I might as well lay down and die now. And so when I first met him, I thought, well, I'm just going to throw it in his face, because at that time, nobody liked Matisse. Nobody liked the painters I liked. And so I just said, he said, well, what painters do you like? And in addition to some contemporary ones, I said Matisse, and thinking that that would just irk him more. But it turned out that that was the magical password. And we sort of became very much involved in all kinds of discussions. Which versions in French Matisse should I read? Delacroix. So I'll just start with that.
How about you, Rod?
it was the fall of 61 that I had been for a year at a local community college and taking some painting classes, and I submitted an application for entering scholarship and got it. I was going to think about going to state, but this made my decision. So here I am. And it was a studio that's right on the corner at Chestnut and Jones. I can't remember which one. I know where 13, 15, and 18 is, but the one up adjacent there in the back. And so everybody, we set up our work and we're going along, and I'm working on this symphony in mud, and Bruce comes by and kind of grunts and okay, all right, it goes on. And this went on for a couple of sessions. And about the third one, he said, where are you going with this? What's this all about? I had a great grandmother in Kansas that I never met, but she was the artist in the family back in 1890 or whatever. And I knew there was a painting in the family of a cow on a barnyard or a pasture or something. I knew that was in the family lineage. And with that, I managed to get the words Minotaur and great grandmother and Rembrandt all in the same sentence. And Bruce wasn't going for it on. And my point being is Bruce had over the years, that had no room for pretense. And he said, you better settle down. I want you to start painting from the model, and painting, still lifes he set up and stuff, So I got out of there with a C. And I've often joked I've been trying to get even with him ever since. But things rapidly improved as I went into my spring semester, and more about that later. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, I can see you guys on the Zoom. Jackson, how about you?
I first took Bruce in fall of 2012, and I was a photographer by trade, and this was my first like painting class ever. So I decided, I don't know why I jumped in head first into an oil painting class, but I ended up with Bruce, and actually was a kind of like, I had spent some time in the Marines, and so having Bruce as this very gruff, voice telling you kind of what to do and how to do it, like very, matter of fact, was kind of a breath of fresh air as far as jumping into the art world. It was kind of almost a safe spot, and Bruce it was just very interesting to hear him, because I would be painting something and then he would, I didn't know how he was going to take my painting, but it didn't matter your level or experience with painting. He would look at your painting, approach it, and then he would, ask you if you knew who this certain artist was. And if you said no, he would say, wait a minute. And then he would go off to his office or go off to the library and then come back with a handful of huge books and said, look at this. And he would show you this artist, and it was a painter who had already, done something that you were trying to reach for. And it was like, how did you know? That's like, I didn't even know that's what I was looking for. But it was really amazing to see. And it wasn't that he was trying to show you like, oh, give up on that. He was like, here's the shoulder of someone you could stand on. So yeah, that was my first experience with this very interesting man as my first painting instructor ever. So.
Who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
Hi David, miss you. My name's Maciej, and I think I graduated 2011, 1 year after David. I don't remember. I think 2011, right? Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. I had him for tutorials, right? Is that what they were called when the
Yes.
professor comes in and talks? I had him for tutorial first year at SFAI MFA. And I was just thinking about the military thing. I was convinced that Bruce was in the military when he was young when I met him. I was just, like, just certain of it. And turned out, no. And then second year, I was his TA for a painting class. So I kind of got to know him the best that way.
So you
And
were a TA.
mhm. So I helped him out with his class. And I mean, I liked his approach to teaching. It was kind of go for it. And then we'd walk around and just give advice, but there wasn't much in the way of instruction ahead of time. He had a lot of stories though, like little art history anecdotes he would put in there. Yeah, my kind of fondest memory of him was how he was in my studio and he got really upset that I had a trash can. He's like, "Why the hell do you have a trash can? Why would you have a trash can in your studio?" And I'm still a little curious, but I think he kind of just because he would go through my trash all the time to find certain colors. If he wanted to describe a color, he would go through all my garbage and find like a little piece of something that was that color, and then rip it out and put it next to my painting. Like, see, better.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I like him.
or he thought I should put a self-portrait inside one of my paintings. So he drew like a quick sketch of me, and then he like put it next to my painting. But when I was TAing, he would just go up to students' paintings and paint on them, which I thought was kind of great because no other teachers would do it. Yeah, that's
David, do you do that with your students? Do you paint on their paintings?
No, I missed that though. I really do. I maybe I should get back into that, but I mean, kind of speaking to just like what happens at SFAI is that in my time there, I was there during for my MFA program from 2009 to 2010, and it was a very strange time because I came in as a very traditional painter from a background just really in that sort of world of like I had teachers similar in Savannah, Georgia, where I was going to school at the time before coming out to SCAD or to SFAI. And yeah, I remember my first meeting with Bruce. I was in this very weird situation where I was taking two classes, two crit classes. One was my studio crit with Bruce, and then the other was another group crit with Mark Van Proyen. And at the time, both of them, I can't speak to more different people in this. I had one class where I had one person trying to get me to break my paintings and to stop painting and to ask why was I painting. And I would bring those works to Bruce, and he would then proceed to tell me why I should be painting. So it was this really constant back and forth that I think was really helpful in helping me figure out what I wanted. But I have this very specific memory of I was making these digital works. And at the time, this is when I was moving and starting to experiment from painting to digital media, which is what I teach now, is like animation and things like that. But I came from this painting background. So I was in the middle of sort of exploring these new areas. And it was just really kind of invigorating to have someone so passionately come up to me. And at the time I was painting these digital photo collages that were photographic. And then I would do these specific kind of trompe l'oeil paintings on top of them. And why I was doing that, just look up some semiotic garbage, stuff that, like I was really trying to sound very smart. It was my first big crit. And I came in there talking about the semiotics of such and such. And Bruce just looks at me and goes, "What in the hell are you talking about? Why don't you just paint the damn thing? Like, you're telling me it just looks unfinished. What are you doing?" And then having the combination of those with other ones of going, interesting. We are really challenging the medium here. I just think having those different kind of ecosystems was really fascinating for me. And I think Bruce was just I can't think of a more painter's painter. Like, he really passionately defended it in a way that was really fun and crit. Sorry, y'all. This is what happens when your department doesn't have Wi-Fi. and you're doing it from a phone, I apologize. But I'll let go and let other people take on more stories from there. But I just wanted to comment on one of my favorite parts of the whole process was just trying to get out of painting, out my head out of just painting for painting's sake, and then also having someone who is just such a painter's painter was a really interesting combination when I was there, and I still think about it all the time.
Yeah, he would defend painting in faculty senate meetings, I remember, because he other departments, he would say, look, film gets equipment, photography gets this, everybody gets all this stuff, but we don't get anything at all except these tables, which I make at home with Julius or whatever. And so it was always interesting to hear his advocacy, his strong advocacy for the painting department and for the needs of painters there. And it was really kind of inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, Maciej, about being a TA and really about his setups, like what he would set up when you guys were doing drawing in the studios, and if any of you guys have memories of different kinds of things that he focused on when he'd set those up. And would you help him?
I'm going into the vaults of my memory. I feel like there were still life set up, but also people could paint whatever they wanted if they were like working on a project. Man, I'm trying to remember now, but I feel it was still life mostly.
It seems like he would always get there early and do a lot of prep in the studio, whether it was in 13 or down in the painting studios.
Mm-hmm. He had a lot of like the anecdote about the books. He would run off and come back with a big book and explain whatever was on his mind in that moment. He seemed very as a teacher. What's the word? The longer I live in Europe, I'm forgetting my English. It's like what's improvisational. He was improvising a lot as a teacher. I feel like in the moment, like he could go on a tangent if he saw that it would help whoever.
Michele or Rod, do you guys remember any of the things that he would focus on, or models, or anything that he would do, or was it?
You mean in the setup?
In this whatever setups he was doing.
I remember because I did take one drawing class, and it was fairly intricate, but he would always emphasize that you were it was a design. It wasn't meant to be an exact replication, and that you had to use your imagination to fill in or change parts, but that it, in a way, I don't know whether this was him, but I think it was, that it was sort of graphic and it needed to work well that way.
I'm trying to pick up on that with the idea of composition. When he would take a group critique or something and put a whole bunch of drawings up there, you could see the effect that he was having on individuals. And more times than not, it had to do with the composition. It's an ongoing thing with music with me, with I'm in a choir and what have you, and stuff in music. But I could realize the similarity, but what's composed on a page and what's composed on a piece of paper by a musical composer. It's this arrangement. And Bruce was so keen on that. He was so good at that. Mm-hmm. I hope this fits in what we're talking about, but not every day, but frequently. And it went on when I was into my third and fourth year. I wasn't taking classes with Bruce, and it wasn't his table, or he wasn't holding court or anything. It was just like down in the student cafeteria. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week there, he'd be at this table right adjacent, where you get your lunch and stuff like that. And he'd be making a point, just like would be ongoing in the studio. And he inevitably, it was just an iconic image of him taking out a pocket knife.
Oh, and a pocket knife.
Slowly he'd sharpen the pencil and then take out the little, pad. And and other students in discussions like there have been some in the past that the word monster would come in, and these huge hands. And he would illustrate on a piece of paper what he was where he was going, what he wanted to convey, and it spoke for itself. It was a powerful image. Thanks.
Jackson, how about you?
I recall that Bruce would, yeah, he would set up, he would have a model come in when he wanted you to paint from real life, and he would also set up something in the background like a prop. One time it was like a rope that he had behind the model. And so you would be trying to paint it, and then he would come look at your work, and if it looked strange, if you know, like I was painting the model and the rope behind him just intersected at such a bad spot. And he asked me, he said, "Why are you putting the rope there?" He said, "You're not a photocopier. I don't, you know, like Michele was saying, he didn't want you to replicate what you saw exactly. He wanted you to work with what was there and make it better, make it, you know, something about you." And so you would, you know, you would do something with the rope that wasn't in real life, but based off real life, and it would make, you know, your paintings better. He would also take you, we would occasionally in his drawing class, we would go out to the courtyard often to paint to paint from the architecture of SFAI, and learn from there and learn perspective, you know, and once again, not try to make it, you know, photorealistic, but to really understand the perspective and to just get those fundamentals down.
That's really interesting because I had forgotten those classes that he would take out into the courtyard to draw the building. And he also did teach architecture students over at UC Berkeley. He taught them drawing. And I had a couple friends who took classes with Bruce. And I should have had one of them come in to talk about how different Bruce might have been teaching these architecture students. I'll try to get information from him and put it in his file here, but it would be really interesting to see how different it would have been with art, you know, these, you know, kind of very, you know, focused architecture students and how he was trying to do whatever he was doing to loosen them up somehow.
I was no longer with the Art Institute, but periodically I would drop by to have lecture to see Bruce and stuff. And he was in the midst of a class when this happened, and it really, I think it connects with here. He was showing a guy how to get this perspective plane across from this wall coming down by the baseboards and stuff, and taking a stick. And he wasn't doing it academically. That was the point. He was taken from what you see around you, what's tangible, when you're actually looking at it. I kept my mouth shut and watched this procedure that he was helping the student with, and it was really way cool. Yeah.
Please, everybody, just weigh in, unmute yourself, and let's have dialogue. I don't want to have to ask questions to you guys. So when you guys are triggered to say something or inspired to say something, please do.
I had no idea he was teaching to architecture students. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
He must have liked them so much better than me. That was my 2 cents.
I think they were scared of him too. So it wasn't just you guys.
Oh man, that was cool though. I had no idea about that.
And I can't remember who mentioned it that they thought Bruce had been in the military.
Yeah, I said that. Yeah.
But Bruce, what I would talk about Bruce, him growing up and things, and he was a Boy Scout. I'm not sure he, aspired to be an Eagle Scout or anything, but when he'd be whittling his apples or his pencils or whatever, you realize, yeah, he was whittling something when he was probably 11 years old and making something as well. All was a carpenter, I think,
I do remember him being in the studio for the tutorials, and I was a messy painter, and I didn't have the caps on exactly right, and the paint would dry, and he'd take out the knife, and he'd be whittling all of my paint tubes.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember him fixing my paint tubes too.
I remember him saying I had a bunch of Monster energy drink cans one time all over my studio, and he came in and we didn't even talk about painting that day. He was just like, you need to. It was a big talk about just my studio space because he was like he was talking about how we were needing to focus on ideas, but like he couldn't stop talking about how many trash like energy drink cans were like floating around my studio. But yeah, he did give off, it was very he had a way about him that was really unique because it was very, I think a lot of people thought he was in the military. I thought I had heard that when I first got to the department, but he was really that combination. He was very, very strict and formal in some ways, but then again, like that improvisational ability that everyone was talking about. That was, to me, I thought the most powerful thing that I got from him, and is how he could touch off on points and take you down like 8 different roads before you got back to where you were. But anyways, yeah.
Well, I kind of wonder about his.
I hope this is germane. I've been very close to the family over the years, but I know his older brother was in the Marine Corps. Lori is really a prince of a guy. Bruce, on the other hand, he was a progressive, really to the core. And let me throw this in just for last. One of his former students was living in Los Altos with family and what have you, and she taught classes down there in her own home, beautiful place. And this was a little exhibition at the home. It was on a Sunday afternoon. We went up to the Los Altos Hills, but Bruce picked me up, and we had a lovely time. But it was obvious there were photographs in the living room, what have you, of the family, and there was the woman's husband. Uh, I think he was ex-military, and I know that there was another one of their son who was a police officer, and so you're not this is not a liberal bastion here we're talking about, and uh, 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 something. We were out on the patio on the steps, and a couple of the guys were talking, and there was something in the news that was very, very germane about gun control and something like this. And Bruce wasn't actually in the conversation, but he just volunteers. He says, "Well, I really dig it when those Black Panthers are going around with shotguns," and I'm going, "Oh shit, now we're in for it." But Bruce wouldn't hesitate.
We have a comment in the chat from Caitlin McGaw. She writes, Bruce was an Eagle Scout and a counselor at a Boy Scout camp in the Sierras. He cherished those times.
Yeah.
And from Kathy Fairbanks, my final review in 2010 was my first interaction with him. He said my sculpture looked like a rural front yard, cars up on blocks and garbage that had not quite been yet chosen to solve a problem. It crushed me. But a decade later, I realized how right he was. I always look at my work now in both those ways first.
Nice.
Yeah, I can say you never quite knew what's going to come out of his mouth any moment. Like, the studios was, at least when I was there, were these big buildings divided into little cubicle things, whatever you call them. And so you could hear the what was going on in the other studios. And I just remember him telling my friend Lyle that, what do you say? He said, I should punch you in the face so you start painting better. And yeah, stuff like that. I mean, we all probably have stories like that, but it was just, I mean, I got entertained by it. And I think if you argued with him, he liked you, but if you were scared of him, he would just rip you apart. So the thing was just to stand up for yourself and just argue back, and then he kind of respected that. But when people were shy or scared, that's when he really I don't know if it was just like a hobby for him or if that was his way of teaching. But yeah, he thrived on making nervous people more nervous, I feel like.
I love the comment that he would, as soon as there was something that he realized he needed to reference, he would come up to the library.
Yeah.
And the things that we brought here to the archives all deal with Northern California art, things that deal with the students, the alumni, the faculty, things pertaining to the fellow travelers, things really relating to student life and the curriculum. And one thing that we brought that the painter has nothing to do with anything, but the book was used so much is this Goya title that Bruce, when you look at the checkout card, it's so funny because it just says McGaw, the whole way through. But he would drag it down to class all the time. It does have really good reproductions, and he was showing it to all you guys. He probably showed it to some of you even, but he knew he was an artist. He was a art historian's painter in a lot of ways. And it was always fun to talk to him about his travels and where he would go. And he would give me tips as to how to ferret out some, interesting artistic thing somewhere buried in Paris or something.
And even the exact distance which you had to stand back
Yes.
to see.
Yes.
I think it was the
Yeah.
Night Watchman painting.
Ah, yeah.
He knew exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And
His comment about studying with Diebenkorn, when Bruce retired, and I don't know if any of you were at the retirement party for him, but the Diebenkorn Foundation was kind enough to donate a sketch that Diebenkorn had done of I think it's the back of Bruce's head. And it was given to Bruce. And it was so interesting. He was kind of I think he was overwhelmed, but he seemed nonplussed by it all. But he did say he had no idea that Diebenkorn had done that, and he had never seen it before. And so it was really fun to see this image of the back of a young Bruce's head by Richard Diebenkorn. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, Bruce was very. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say about the art history stuff. Yeah, I just remember when I told him I studied in Florence. He had such a good memory. He started drawing me maps of Florence. I can't remember why he was trying to explain, but just like of all the streets and all. Really good memory about that stuff.
And what I was going to say is that he was very big on having books specifically for reference when you were working on paintings, to look at the masters or look at any artist, or visiting museums. He loved to go to museums, and he loved to show his students museums too. And he was very honest, even in museum settings. He was very honest about works. I recall one time when we went to go see I forget what it's called, but we went to see a Diebenkorn show at one of the museums there in San Francisco, and we were all looking at this painting. It was one of I forget what it's called, but it's a woman. It's his wife, I believe, in a yellow hat, and we're all looking at it, and he says to the entire class, he says, "I want you to look at something." And it's like the way her legs are crossed in the painting. He says, "You see that? That's bullshit." He said, if you try to do that in real life," he said, that the anatomy doesn't work that way. It's not, you see that? It's not real. It doesn't work. He said, but he makes it work. It looks right because he painted it right. It's not, but otherwise it's bullshit. He said, don't forget that.
Yeah. Again, when Bruce was at the table in the cafeteria, one time he's doing the whole drill there, and then he's fussing over. I don't know if he had a copy of what he was referring to, but it was a William Blake, and it was something in one of the angels and one of the figures. And he spent all morning trying to work this thing, how this leg would work, and he couldn't do it. He was still puzzled as he was sharing it with the students. Also along the way, his wife Pat gave him this exquisite book about the same size as this Goya on Masaccio. And this is just typical Bruce. There are a bunch of these, clerics all in robes joined together. And these are my numbers. I think I have them right, but there are like 6 of them. Yeah, with these robes that go down to their ankles. But leave it to Bruce. He found out either they were missing 1 foot, or there was, there were 6 sides. There should be 12 feet there, but there was either 11 or 13. I can't remember which way it went. But leave it to Bruce to find out.
Okay, Rod, you brought a satchel with you today.
Okay, I was gonna save this for later, but
okay.
I'll share it now.
Okay.
Share it now.
All righty.
Let me give just a little really leapfrog across the history. When I was no longer teaching in the Arts Institute, well, it was during when I was on the faculty with Bruce that our friendship and relationship really melded. And it was with socializing, it was watching his daughters grow up, it was holidays with the family, on and on and on. And during 1984, I went through a really tough patch. It was a real tough one. And I was at a facility in Martinez. It was open board, and I don't know if I can't remember if I called him. I don't think I had, but got the word, and he came out on a Wednesday morning, and we went for a hike and a lunch, and it went on. He didn't leave till 10 o'clock that night. Moving on, several years, Bruce went through a really tough patch of his own, a really tough one. I think there's some people online here with this number I'm referring to, but we all circled the wagon and kept him in the center of the herd, and we got through it. And there was some incredible bonding through this. Not too long after was the stroke, and it slowed him down, but he was still Bruce, still big Bruce.
Big hands.
Yeah. And then not too long after was the cancer. And darn it, bear with me, I'm doing okay with this. And through all this stuff, we had a series. I would either go over to Albany, come over to Millbrae, we have these poor boy sandwiches and blah blah. But I came up with Caitlin, his daughter, and wanting to get together with Bruce. And I think I'm going to go over there. Anyway, it came down that she and her husband brought Bruce over on a Sunday afternoon over to my studio, my apartment. It was the same building. And they went and got something to eat. And Bruce and I spent over an hour and a half in my studio, just doing what we'd been doing for years and years and years. It was really great. When I helped get him back into the car, it was very emotional. That was on Sunday. Tuesday, Caitlin called me and said the doctors say he could go in any time now. You might want to come over, and I did. I went over Wednesday, and the hospice people had attended him for the morning, and he was asleep and comfortable. And Lori was there, his brother, just such fond memories of him. But then they left, and there were just the three of us, and I was sitting up next to Bruce at the top of the bed, and Caitlin and Cecily were down at the bottom, and at the bottom of the bed, and we just chatted and chatted. And again, those iconic things about the pocket knife and what have you. And then I casually mentioned, they're going to have to surgically remove that shoulder bag that he always has. And Caitlin just said offhand, it's going to be buried with him. And with that, she turned around just as I'm doing and pulled this up. And it's the identical one. She said, wait, and handed it to me. Doing the best I can with this. And I know Caitlin's out there online with this stuff and a few other friends, but it speaks for itself, I'm going to ask if, with your permission, Jim, I don't want catching you off the spot. Would you just take this and read it for me?
We have one other guest here, Jim Edwards, who was a student in the 60s too.
I'll make a comment. I can't read it. It's on the gravestone of Robert Louis Stevenson and Samoa.
Okay. Under the wide and starry sky, dig the grave and let me lie. Glad did I have live and glad die, and I laid me down with a will. This will be a verse you grave for me. Here he lies where he hangs to be. Home is the sailor, home from the sea, and the hunter home from the hill. And that Rod, is that on the?
Yeah, it's on his gravestone in
Yeah.
Samoa.
Yeah.
It's the line, and I laid me down with a will that's got Bruce written all over it. You know, for me, I'm speaking of Bruce, and I'm speaking of all of us in some sense of myself. We make our choices. And Bruce is an example of someone who had the courage, of his convictions. And he passed that on to us. That's his legacy. The courage, to just with the examples you guys have given us, perfect examples of walking the walk. I'm sure that another component's always going to share, but then this is enough for thanks for letting me share this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That it's interesting when Bruce was picking up some things at his place, and he had a box of all these flyers that he had always held on to from the 60s to the 70s and into the 80s. And they were flyers for art openings, for musical events, for film screenings, for political things. And he handed them off to us. And I also thought that was a really good snapshot into a piece of Bruce's brain and his life that you wouldn't necessarily notice if you were a student of his, but you would understand, like, oh, that makes perfect sense when you see all these things that he was interested enough to hang on to these flyers. Maybe he didn't go to all these events, but he probably went to a lot of them. And then you realize his connection with things like poetry and his connections, as everyone has mentioned, with art history too. And you realize you can get a pretty good idea of the way that he came to even paint the way he does, and the artist that he was, from a lot of those little pieces of ephemera. So if any of you guys have those stories of Bruce, or have those kinds of what seem to be incidental recollections, it'd be great to write them down, and we could put them into Bruce's file for posterity and for researchers.
I know I had a footnote on this, Jeff. Art history categorizes indigenous things, Bay Area figurative painting, Impressionism, all these schools and stuff. They come and go. They don't actually go, but they come and they have their moments. And certainly Bruce earned his spurs in Bay Area figurative painting. But for me, our friendship over the years, I feel like he moved far beyond that. I hope that history is very good to him in acknowledging him as the surrealist that he was.
Yeah.
It runs through so many of his paintings. They're absolutely ingenious. He turns also, in addition to this, turns poems into paintings. That one he was working on to the end, that Lorca poem of the woman in the moonlight. Normally, moonlight or nightscapes are tonal, like, Ennis or Ryder and stuff like that. But here's Bruce using greens and blues and creating this beautiful moonlit, landscape with the figure, out of just beautiful colors, as a colorist. And again, it speaks for itself.
There's one thing that I wanted Jim Edwards to say about his teaching, because Jim didn't take his classes, but he did mention something to me earlier that I thought was reflective of Bruce being at the Art Institute.
Yeah, I was at the Art Institute from 65 to 69, so I was only in the original building. And so obviously Rod and I have been friends for ever since that time. But I didn't formally take with Bruce class, but it was a much smaller place at the time. It was before the new building was built, and so we were always in the original building. The faculty was there. I was studying with Diepenkorn and Jim Weeks and Jack Jefferson and that group of people from that period of time, and I was a painting student. But what was interesting is, though I never studied with Bruce, he would come by and talk to me about my painting. And this was interesting because that was sort of what happened in those days. You didn't just have to be enrolled in a class. I remember William Scharf, who was he was Mark Rothko's assistant in New York, and he came out for a semester. And Bruce and William Scharf would come by and talk about your painting, not just with me, but with everybody. It was a very casual kind of atmosphere, which was the spirit of the place at the time, for sure. So You didn't have to be enrolled in the class.
Yeah. Well, that was as reflective of students as much as anything. It always seemed like the students would interact like that, but the faculty would as well too.
I remember we had a minute department, painting department. Bruce was the chairman of on the faculty for the painting department, and it had to do something was mentioned just a little while ago earlier about the photography gets equipment, and we get these tables and stuff. And Bruce was just talking about the general sense, the demeanor, the tenor of the department, and he used the word rough-hewn, and I've never forgotten it. It was just one of these perfect moments. It was Bruce, but just how he saw it. It was spontaneous. It was like it wasn't academic, rigidly academic or any of this stuff with the term refuge. And to me, it just denoted the spirit of Walt Whitman. And I was fortunate to go to a couple of we just buddied up in the poetry readings at Cody's and Moe's, in Berkeley, and this was just all part of it. This rough-hewn Whitman spirit that he left us with. Yeah.
Well, Bruce loved poetry. I remember being at the San Francisco Museum on Van Ness in the old days, and the great British poet Basil Bunting was reading, and there was Bruce. He was in the audience, of course. And so we would talk about poetry quite often.
For the students who were his students 50 years later, did he bring up poetry with you guys as well?
Yeah, I still do it, but I like to keep lists of word combinations that wouldn't naturally happen, like 2 words or 3 words that I haven't seen put together before, and I had a big list of them of these phrases on a piece of paper on my studio wall. And he comes in to do the tutorial, and he's just like, "What's this?" And he's like, "This is poetry. You just wrote a poem here." And he was very excited about just this long list of combinations of words that was kind of things I overheard or misheard.
I don't recall him, in the classroom setting so much as going over poetry as much as he would in his home studio, like the Lorca painting. But he would constantly play music. That was one of his things, is he would play music while we were painting, especially if there was a live model there. He once made me a mixtape of Artie Shaw, his greatest hits. I thought that was really great. He would just come up to me and give me this, what was it, like Moonray or something, or he'd be playing. He would come and tell me the name of the songs unprompted, but I appreciated them. And yeah.
We have another side note from Caitlin McGaw, and she writes, Bruce's library at home is vast. Art books, so many, all organized by painter and genre. So much poetry, from small press to the Beats to Blake and beyond. Books on jazz, folk music, mythology from all over the world. California history, politics, like the flyers Jeff mentioned, a snapshot of his hugely diverse interests.
Yeah. Yeah, the Goya book was funny because I brought it from the library figuring I would take it and give it to Bruce, and I took it over to him, and he had it, of course, and I don't know what I was thinking that he wouldn't have this. I just thought, well, it's very out of print, it's rare, it's probably hard to find, but of course he already had it, so that's why it made its way back into our collection there.
Mm-hmm.
Should we open it up, Maria, to comments?
Yeah, I think it's a great time now to open it up. I'm gonna, you can unmute yourself, and I'm just remember that we are still recording, just so you know, and you can also start your video. We have another comment from Eduardo Pineda. I was in Bruce McGaw's, now it's going fast, painting and drawing classes in about 1976, 78, at a time when I was never assured other instructors were going to show up to their classes. He consistently was present. He had a strong rise to his gait that I attributed to yoga, which he told me could focus the mind similar to painting. Not sure he also did yoga, but I was starting then. And Theosis Santos is saying, I was his student for painting why is this there? I can't read the year, and was there when he retired. Also attended his retirement show. The Bruce story I have is when I used to take like 15-minute breaks often in his class, and he would get mad at me, and at some point called me weak for walking away from the painting because I said I needed some air from thinking too much about it. He told me to sit in front of the painting and let the painting speak to me about where it wanted to go. Till this day, I use that analogy with everything in my life, specifically with my art practice. He also told me to make my paintings the size of the door of every place I lived at. He told me about how he used to do that after graduating school. Also, I remember always he used to love playing jazz while in the studio.
Yeah.
Thank you, Theosis. And Connie, do you want to unmute yourself?
I am unmuted.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Connie.
I really don't know what to say. Bruce was very dear to me. Probably the most influential person in my life outside of my parents. And he was full of surprises. You know, I remember when I first started studying with him, I walked into the studio and somebody was playing jazz. And I looked over and Bruce was dancing by himself.
Wow.
I never forgot that. Aside from that, I don't have much to say.
Thanks so much, Connie.
One of his paintings was that of a Thelonious Monk, and it's virtually he was a transparency of Thelonious with I think the background was in Bruce's studio, but it'd be as though he were listening to it. Here's this image floating, and one of Monk's most legend. We shared a lot of this, Bruce and I. Is Monk's legendary piece was Around Midnight. And doggone it, Bruce didn't pass at midnight on Friday the 22nd.
I'd like to just bring up something. We've talked about how large his hands were, and I'd like to. It just reminded me of how he would come up to your paintings. If he had a suggestion or if he couldn't verbalize it, then that's when he would go and actually physically alter your painting with a brush. But he would have these very large hands, and as he was getting older, his hands would shake more and more often, and you're like, what the heck is he going to do right now? And you'd walk up to your painting, and with the shaky hands, he would go and just make the most delicate, change alteration to your painting. And it was so smooth, and you're like, I can't do that. It was just one of the most beautiful things to see.
That's a nice image.
And one more comment by James Nix. Bruce loved to brag he was at Ginsberg's first Howl reading in San Francisco.
Oh, I don't know about that. The way Bruce told that story to me was that Manuel Neri was at that reading at the Sixth Gallery, and Manuel said, "Bruce, you have to hear him read this." And the next night, I understand, Ginsberg read the Howl again at the Telegraph Hill Community Center, and Bruce was at that one. But I would love to opt to think of Bruce at the one at the Sixth Gallery too. But he showed at the Sixth Gallery with all those people, and there are wonderful images of him and Manuel and others, all those people who, that was Bruce's original group of people that he hung with, of course. People think of him as being part of the Bay Area figurative thing when he was anointed as that at the Oakland Museum show in the late 50s, which he was a part of course. However, it was that group of people from the Sixth Gallery were really, his true group of artists and bohemians.
I got a sense that you were just about to, or were in fact channeling Bruce there. You said that about whether he was at the first time. Yeah, I don't know about that. I can't tell you how many times that either in conversation with me or somebody else is right. I don't know about that. That was just as iconic as any of the other things about him. I don't know about that.
Well, Bruce, like other people have said, Bruce is very influential with me too. So, are there other comments from people, Maria? People
I'm
like
just
to.
checking in. We're probably going to do a final round. And then when I stop the
Yeah.
recording, everyone can unmute themselves and say hi and turn their little windows up. Laura Bosfa, thank you all so much. I'm also thankful for my one interaction with Bruce in my final review. He was thoughtful, engaging, encouraging to a sculpture student, one of the many faculty who I wish I had the chance to study with. And Enid Brown, I was at SFAI from 1973 to 76. I am glad people brought up his love of poetry. One of the earliest conversations I had with him related to his painting of Orpheus. We argued about why Orpheus did look back.
Orpheus.
I would like to bring up, sorry. I would like that reminds me that from that comment from Laura, it reminds me that one of my favorite things about Bruce is that he did care, he didn't care what type of work you were studying, what genre. He cared about you as an artist, and he wanted you to grow always. I was a photography student, and he told me, and he appreciated my drawings, and he would say, that I could draw when I wanted to. But more than that, he told me to do one photograph a day. He was very intent on people growing as artists and growing as themselves.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I don't think he was so, to my practice, so influential technically. I don't think he showed me that much technically, but just his attitude towards making work, his attitude towards art, and about learning and studying the history and looking back. And I mean, that I think about that every time I paint. I think about that. And
Well, thank you.
Bruce is very much in my head as I paint. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. As I paint, Bruce is still there. I think it's going to be a very long time until Bruce is not there anymore.
Nice.
That was Connie Goldman.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts, Jeff, or should I stop the recording here?
Thank you to everybody, and Kate, whenever you find yourself in our neighborhood down here at Hawthorne and Howard Street, next to the Howard Street entrance to SF MoMA, please stop by and say hello. The exhibition based on the art in SFAI is still up at SF MoMA and will be through June. And so any of you who want to go to that, stop by here and we'll wander you over there and get you into that show too. But if you are a member already, but it's great to see everybody. It sure is fun to talk about Bruce. So thank you, everybody who is here today.
I wanted to thank